I want to start out this morning with a misperception, a faulty assumption that I think a lot of us deal with. You see, I think this comes out of a generational lag, of a different time period that we grew up. You see, the assumption we have is that if we're going to share our faith or talk to somebody about God or talk to somebody about Jesus, we're going to run into this buzzsaw of antagonism. And I think this comes out of an earlier age, a long, long time ago, 10, 15 years ago. It was so long ago. At least it feels that way. But here's what I mean. When I was growing up, everybody was either Lutheran or Catholic, because it was Minnesota. You were either Lutheran or Catholic in the 80s. It's just the way it was. I remember I was working at a church up in northern Minnesota, and we would seriously get phone calls, and people would say, "My grandmother just died. Can you do the funeral for her?" And we'd say, "Well, was she Lutheran?" And they'd say, "Well, she wasn't Catholic, so she must have been Lutheran." I am not making up any part of that story, okay? None. But that was the assumption, that you were in Minnesota in the 80s, you were Lutheran or Catholic. Although we did know some Baptists. They didn't drink publicly. Great people, though. But the truth is, and so in that environment, if somebody didn't believe or didn't claim to have some church membership, they made an affirmative choice for that. And so you would run into people who would very emphatically say, "I don't believe." And if you said something about inviting them to church or saying that I believe in Jesus, you would run into the antagonism of that because they were swimming upstream culturally. And a lot of us have experiences like that. However, that's not the world we're living in anymore. Somewhere over the last generation, we have gotten into this place where the cultural assumption is that you don't have a relationship with any spiritual formation or anything. And you'll see a lot of this reflected in the professional literature. There was a very influential book that came out a few years ago called Rise of the Nuns. And not nun in the sense of a woman who belongs to a Catholic order, but nun as in none of the above. There is just so much less spiritual thought that goes into people's lives. It's more that they're just not thinking about it as opposed to antagonistic towards religion. I was listening to something a little bit ago, and it so just encapsulated this thought. It was a not religious podcast. It was not in any way, shape, or form about religion. It was about a book that they were talking about, and there were some very Catholic themes in this book. And one of the people on there said, "Look, I'm not religious." And she said, "It's not that I'm rebelling against religion. My parents didn't have any faith. We just never thought about it." And I'm like, that's what we run into a lot. So that's the first piece that I want to get out, is that when we're working in this world, and we're sharing our faith, it's not antagonism that we're running into. It's indifference. And that is the place I want to start. There is this great passage in 1 Corinthians where Paul is writing to the church in Corinth. And he says, "Look, if I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but I do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal." And he goes on through this great passage and says, "Look, if I don't have these things with love, it doesn't mean a thing." And I'm always annoyed because it feels like the only time we read this passage is at weddings. And it's not a wedding passage. Because what Paul is talking about here is, how do we interact with the world? And the thing is we want to interact with this world out of this posture of love, out of assuming that people are made in the image of God, out of assuming that we can love them, and assuming that it's not going to be an antagonistic relationship. Look, I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. Nobody ever got argued into the kingdom of God, okay? Despite your best efforts, nobody ever got beaten into submission to being Jesus as Lord, at least not in any way that mattered. And the flip side is, there's a lot of people who got loved into the kingdom of God. Now, we are at this point in history. We are coming out of the pandemic, and we are asking these questions of how does life look post-pandemic? What is it going to be? And one of the things that we need to do, and we need to keep coming back to, is that we need to share our faith. We need to say, this is who Jesus is to us, and this is why it matters to us. This is why we are here. This is why we get out of bed early on a rainy Sunday morning as opposed to sipping a big mug of coffee and reading the comics and getting ready for the Bucs game. Okay? This is why we're here. You are here early on a Sunday morning because this matters to you. And if you love the people around you, if you love those friends and those neighbors and those coworkers, you want to share who Jesus is with them. Now, over the course of history, there is two biblical models for telling people about Jesus. The first one, come and see, as Jerry just read for us. These disciples encounter Jesus, and Jesus says, "Look, come and see." And then Andrew goes to Peter, his brother, and says, "Look, come and see this." And I love this. There's a great passage as the story goes on, because he said, "You need to see this Jesus of Nazareth." And somebody says, "Look, can anything good come out of Nazareth?" And part of it is, in this situation, Nazareth was the northern part of Israel. And the accent was so thick that they weren't allowed to read at the temple. Now, those of us from Minnesota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, who have been known to have a little bit of an accent, should be familiar with this concept, especially if it bleeds into your speech. But what's happening here is these disciples are saying, "Come and see." And now, here's the thing, is when we say come and see, usually what we're doing is we're narrowing this down to 8:30 a.m. or 10:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning. And we're saying, we want to invite you to come and see. And so we say that to our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers, and say, come with me to church on Sunday morning. And I'm going to tell you, there's nothing wrong with that. But I also want to challenge you a little bit to broaden that out. Part of what we want to do here is we want to have a lot of different options for people. Not only do we have Sunday morning worship, but we have service events. We have Operation Christmas Child. We have Vacation Bible School. We have high school high adventure trips and high school mission trips. And blood drives. Let's not forget those. We have all these different opportunities. Don't just think of one big door, but think of a ton of different little doors. Every time we have somebody coming onto our campus, it gives us another opportunity to build a relationship with them. Another opportunity for them to say, "Yeah, I like this place." I was serving at a congregation once, and I was asking somebody, "Hey, great to have you here. How did you end up at this place?" And he said, "Well, my sponsor comes here." I'm like, "Oh, cool." And what I come to find out is there had been an AA group meeting at that congregation on a Thursday night. And some of the people from there started coming to worship on Sunday mornings. And so more and more of them would start by coming on Thursday nights to AA. And then they would start coming on Sunday mornings to church. And it was this wonderful entryway because, frankly, nobody understands redemption better than people who've gone through Alcoholics Anonymous. And what we want to do is have more and more and more different ways for people to come in. More and more different ways for us to be able to invite them. More and more different ways for us to say, come and see who this Jesus is, this person, this God who has made a change in our life. It is something for us to come to. Now let's go back to this point I was saying earlier about you don't run into antagonism, but you run into indifference. Barna had a study a couple years ago. Now, this is pre-pandemic, so it might have changed a little, but I think the gist of it is still true. Something like 67% of Americans said if somebody invited them to church, they would come. Now, I think that's probably a little high. It's probably 67% of Americans think they would say yes. But that's really true is they would be polite and respectful. They would say, yeah, I'd think about that. And I want to challenge you in that to say to your friends, hey, I've got this going on at my church. I'd love to have you come with me. And sometimes it's going to be the big stuff that you traditionally think of, Easter or Christmas. But sometimes it's going to be stuff like helping out at the blood drive. Sometimes it's going to be stuff like, hey, we're getting things together as a service project and we're going to do this. And I want you to think about that. What are those places where you can invite? And it doesn't have to be the big stuff. It can be any little thing as a doorway. This is a beautiful passage in the Old Testament where it says, don't despise the day of small beginnings. Every little bit helps. Now, here's the thing. That come and see attitude has been the attitude of the American church for a long time. And there's nothing wrong with it. We need to do that. But we forget the other side of it, which is go. The end of the Gospel of Matthew, before Jesus ascends into heaven, he says to his disciples, go, make disciples of all nations, baptizing in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Go. We forget that. Go. All right, let's think about this. And here's the thing. When we think go, we often think go to the ends of the earth. How many of you all, I'm curious, work in education? Raise your hand if you work in education. Okay, got a few. Let's think. Healthcare. Okay, fair number of you. Manufacturing. Okay, those are just off the top of my head some of the biggest employers around here. I'm sure I could go through the list and find something for every one of you. But those places are places I can't get into easily. I get into the hospitals more than I did a year ago, but I get in and I get to see a patient or two, and that's it. Those of you who work in healthcare see people all the time. Those of you who work in education can be a witness not just to your students, but to your coworkers. And one of the challenges for us is to be in this world and share that good news with people around you. Not in a, hey, we're going to whack you over the head with this, but this is who I am. One of the interesting things I've known over the years is a lot of people who've done Bible studies in their office. Not in any sort of forced way, but just in a getting together with a couple of people and say, let's get together in the conference room on our lunch break and read the Bible together. And it's a great opportunity because then they do that. And it's a witness and you get other people coming to check it out. I remember a friend of mine talking about he was doing that. And they got to this very earthy part of Isaiah. And he's like, what do I do with this? And I guess I just got to read it and go with it. But it was this wonderful witness not to tame it down, but to be out there and say, this is who I am. See, the thing is, so often what we do is we say we're going to leave evangelism to the church people. We're going to leave evangelism to the professional. And the reality is I can only be in one place at a time. Whereas everybody here, you guys are encountering your neighbors, your friends, your coworkers all the time. And they're seeing you, and they're knowing you, and your life is a witness to your relationship with Jesus. Which leads me back to this point. I want to circle back to where we started, working out of love. This is my biggest challenge for you, to say this is out of love. Because sometimes when we talk about these things, when we talk about reaching the unchurched, it turns into a project. And have you ever felt like a project to somebody? It's not a fun experience. I remember back when I was in college going through this time when I had a very tenuous relationship with faith, if at all. And I had this collection of friends, and some of them were very open and honest and loving in this, and witnessing out of who they were and just sharing the example of their faith and saying, this is who I am and this is who my relationship it is with Jesus. And it was very grounded for me, and I really loved that. And the flip side is I had one or two people who treated me as somebody who was a project. And I would always get that, if you're going to die tonight, do you know where you're going to go? And I'm like, this is not helpful. Not helpful at all. And so what I want to come back to is this idea that there are people God has put in your life for you to love. There are people who God has put in your life for you to share your faith with. And if you're sitting here tonight thinking, I don't know anybody, or I can't think of anybody who needs to know about Jesus who I love, ask God to put those people in your path and to open your eyes to them. There is enough sinners to go around for everybody. I say that for congregations. I say that for us as individuals. There is plenty of us, plenty of people for us to reach out to. And I want you to think and pray and say, okay, who has God called me to reach? The people he's put in my path, the people who I know and who I love. And I want you to start thinking about that and pray for them as you go through this week. That you can say, you know what, that person needs God's love, needs God's security, needs God's sense of purpose in their life. And I want to share that with them. Not out of a sense of project, but out of a sense of love. That God would be glorified in every place that you go. And as we say, come and see. Amen.